Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly.
Hello everyone and welcome to this innovation feature. My name is John Howarth and I'm the moderator for the presentation, which is entitled Delivering Net Zero Emissions, What Can You Do? And it's presented by Ian Watt and Mark Williams from Scottish Water. There'll be a short time for question and answers at the end of the presentation. The presenters' details will be shown during the Q&A session should you wish to contact them for further information. Please post your questions using the Q&A button in Microsoft Teams. We will deal with as many questions as we can within the available time. Thank you, and I would now like to hand over to Mark Williams. Mark, can you share your screen, please?
Yes, thank you, John. I'm just doing that now. Okay.
That's great.
Good morning. Sorry, can I just double check, John? Can you see my screen?
I can indeed, Mark. Yes, it looks good.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us along to say a few words around delivering net zero emissions today. And in particular, the focus here is what can you do as a water sector, and particularly Scottish Water. We recognise that we rely on working in partnership with supply chains and delivery partners to help us to identify and deliver some of the opportunities in our capital investment that will support net zero emissions. So from a Scottish Water perspective, net zero is one of the three big ambitions that we've set in our business plan that was launched in January 2020. And really this is a strategic plan that sets out what we're trying to achieve for Scotland over the next 20 years. So as a consequence, everything that we do is looked at through a lens of net zero emissions, whether it's the operation of our sites or the investment in our assets. So really we need to work with and are working with our supply chains and partners to really embed this thinking in what we do. And to support that, we launched our net zero emissions route map in September 2020, and you can see the link there. It's an online route map rather than a sort of just a plan or a document. And one of the key things that you'll be aware of, I guess, is that Water UK also has a route map. Our net zero emissions route map seeks to achieve net zero by 2040, but covering both operational emissions and investment emissions, the supply chain emissions that we have within our capital programme. And really, what's the scale of the challenge we have? Looking at the emissions we control, the operational emissions on the left-hand side there. In 1920, we were around about 250,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalents. And you can see here, grid electricity consumption and the use of power is very central to those emissions at this point in time. And from an investment perspective, using the tools we've developed, we've estimated that for every £1 million that we invest, there's around about 200 to 300 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalents emitted in the embodied emissions in what we buy and how we deliver it. So our strategy is to achieve net zero through becoming more energy efficient, using lower carbon energy products, adopting renewables, moving away from fossil fuels, embracing low carbon construction. That's everything from the design, the procurement and the delivery of what we have. And to recognise that we will have ongoing emissions, to store away emissions that cannot be avoided, investing in natural capital in our land holdings. So you'll all know that water and wastewater services can be very energy intense in terms of the 24/7 operation of our assets. And for these, very simple, we have to drive down electricity consumption on site. We have to maximise the energy we recover from sites, and from in particular here bioresource or sludge, and to generate or host on site to power our own sites in renewable ways. From a capital emissions perspective, a capital investment perspective, again, we invest substantial sums each year in civil and mechanical engineering. And our approach is really kind of driving hard at selecting low emission options and designing for net zero, procuring low or zero emission construction materials. And it's not just the materials, it's also in the plant, the mechanical, electrical kit that we're buying. And to build in a low or zero carbon construction way. And at this point, I'll pass over to Ian to kind of take you through the next part of how that's working.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So the next few slides is going to summarise the intelligence that we have and highlight some of the areas that we're currently working on. This slide shows an extract from the route map, and it's an analysis of the CCAT data that we currently hold. So that's our carbon calculator workbook. It's an initial breakdown of the areas of the capital programme which contributes to our investment emissions. As you can see, MICA contributes to around 15% of the overall emissions currently. However, we do recognise that the capital programme is changing its focus. Over the last 20 years, we have built some great examples of new infrastructure as a result of legislation compliance or environmental issues. However, going forward, we do need to now maintain that infrastructure, and our capital maintenance programme is going to double over the next 3 years, and will continue to grow thereafter. So we do recognise that MEICA will play an increasing focus on our investment emissions. In looking at the carbon information that we currently hold on MEICA equipment, I've got to say it's not that great, and we need to improve upon our understanding of carbon in the equipment and products that we are using. The target is net zero, and so we need to look at all areas, including the MEICA equipment and products. Next slide, Mark. So in moving the net zero topic forward, one area that we have been working on to date is in design. From developing common carbon rules for Scottish Water and its delivery partners. So in the future, our delivery partners will be looking for carbon data of products and equipment to justify their designs to ourselves. Another key enabler here is standardization. We want to ensure that in the standard solutions and designs that we have, these are low carbon, essentially ensuring that these are used in products where the carbon has been minimized. And as part of the support tools, in addition to material selection graphs to support our designers, to enable the comparison of options, we've been also building carbon capability within our new benchmark estimating system. So in the future, we'll be able to not only obtain estimates of the cost of solutions, but also the carbon included within there. So we need to understand if we're reducing carbon from previous benchmarks for similar projects, and ultimately we do need data to do this. We've been able to include all the CESM 4 civil engineering factors into our new estimating system, and we'd also like to include MEICA data going forward for the kit and products. At present, we've only been able to use some high-level curves as an approximation, so we are looking to improve that going forward. Next slide, Mark, please. However, we do recognise that it's not all about embodied carbon. Where energy and operational emissions occur, we need to look at the whole life carbon emissions, as these can sometimes be as much as 90% of the carbon in the products and kits. So low embodied emissions cannot be at the detriment of energy or operational efficiency. So we do bear in mind that energy and operational emissions still play a part. Next slide, please, Mark. So do we have a problem? I'm sure you'll have your own views on that, and we'll come to that in the Q&A session, I'm sure. However, in addition to the change in the programme emphasis, we're also acutely aware that as operational emissions have been decreasing over time, embodied emissions in our programme have not. And unless we do something now, they will continue to grow to be a larger proportion of the overall emissions. And this was highlighted back in 2020 in the Infrastructure Commission for Scotland report. And the diagram there shows the significance of capital carbon emissions will increase as the electricity grid decarbonises and operational emissions continue to decrease. As we've already highlighted, M&E equipment is at least 15% of the total, but it will grow. And to get to net zero, again, we do need to look at all areas. Next slide, please, Matt. Now, looking at some of the enablers that we've been putting in place to help us on the journey, we've influenced and supported changes to the WIME's data sheets to include carbon. We understand that the WIME specifications and data sheets are in the process of being uploaded to the Pump Centre website, and this also includes an embodied carbon calculator that we've supported and provided, and the WIMES calculator should be available for use on the Pump Centre website if you need this to help you. Next slide, Mark, please. Another enabling action is that we have set procurement expectations within our frameworks for all new, existing and future suppliers. As a minimum, we're asking our suppliers to commit to adopting carbon saving practices and implement carbon management plans within 2 years, demonstrate how they will approach and manage carbon not only within their own organisation, but also their supply chain for goods and services. And we need everyone to adopt a circular economy and a best practice carbon management practices, which delivers value and also helps achieve lower cost. So ultimately, what we're saying is this is the direction of the industry. We do want to work with you and help with you and ensure that everyone comes on the journey with us. Next slide, Mark, please. So today, I suppose we're really challenging the industry as a whole. To achieve net zero, a key consideration will be the materials, the equipment that we purchase and use in our capital programme. And we need to ensure to achieve net zero that we're using low carbon equipment and products. Data is key to understanding it. It will also help us support us focusing our attention on where and what we need to influence. We need everyone to be partners with us and come forward with us with the carbon of the products and services and a kit. But we also would like you to identify areas where these can be driven down. And I'm sure whilst, at the moment, this is a Scottish Water request, I'm sure that all other water companies will be following suit. I've got to say that there is some information out there from a limited number of suppliers, but it is very much in the minority at the moment. So I suppose we'd like to stop here and open up the discussion. We've put forward a few provocations on the screen. Is there, and I suppose we'd ask, is there anything that you have heard that gives you concerns? Going back to the original title, what can you do? But also, let's discuss where the blockers or issues are to make this happen. So thank you for your time this morning, and I'll hand back to John to open up the Q&A.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks guys. That was great. Hopefully it's going to provoke a bit of Q&A from the attendees. We've got one or two questions already. The first one that's come in is, are you working on this with any other water companies, or is it a sole Scottish Water project?
I think, sorry, it's Mark here, just to maybe to come in on that one. I think across the industry, this has grown in importance. So while Scottish Water at the moment has obviously included capital emissions, investment emissions in its route map, we expect this to kind of follow in due course for all the companies. There's a great interest in developing this approach at a Water UK level and with other water companies. From a Scottish Water perspective, we've obviously participated and worked with the other companies on guidance on accounting for capital carbon, and there'll be more joint work around this in the coming months and years. More broadly, there's some data sharing approaches we're developing with certain of the companies in terms of sharing our practice, understanding what works, etc. So I think increasingly you will see a lot of joint work across the industry to do this. And I know, Ian, you've got a particular engagement with several of the water companies in terms of the practical aspects of delivery here.
Yeah, so as part of the wider supply chain, initially the capital investment directors of all the water companies were getting together to discuss matters relating to COVID. Now that is calming down slightly, they've turned their attention to other matters, and carbon is one of those areas. So myself and a few others have been together to discuss how do we take a number of topics forward. And that again, it goes back through the whole project life cycle, from the design through the materials to the actual construction on site. So we are having to look at all areas.
Right, okay, I've now got another question here, and it says, highlighted that there are challenges or blockers to moving this on. I'm wondering what Scottish Water think the key challenges are to achieving this.
From my perspective, one of the big challenges we've had in both developing the tools and accessing the data to inform those tools. So at the moment now we've got good data for civils, we've got good data for some of the other elements that we use, and we've been really sort of faced with the challenge of how do you populate up the mechanical, electrical, so we can actually start to make proper choices and understand both the embodied and operational carbon within that particular area. So this is why we've really taken this approach of working with the Pump Centre, trying to sort of develop the WIMES data sheets in a way that captures or seeks to capture the embodied and operational carbon, and also then to support the suppliers in actually calculating that. Some suppliers have got really good information already. Others, this is still an emerging area, so we have to kind of look at how we support that. So from my perspective, it's about the kind of the ability to understand it so we can then move on and manage it and make better choices. But more broadly, then it's also about kind of we're not the experts necessarily, and trying to sort of draw ideas and innovations from the supply chain. And Ian, is there anything more you want to say on that?
No, I think you've fairly well covered that in terms of, at the moment, as I sort of kind of highlighted through the slides, we do have reasonable information available on civil engineering carbon data, and it's really in the MIACA arena that we're needing that data now.
Good. Okay, I've got another question here from Peter, and he says, thanks both, very useful and much needed. What weighting do you see net zero carbon having in framework contracts, and how that plays alongside increased cost?
Do you want me to start off with that?
Yeah, start off with that, and I'm happy to give another perspective at the end.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, going forward within our frameworks, carbon is going to be key, and it's not only in our material and kit frameworks, but it's also in our suppliers as well. So, for example, we're out at procurement at the moment for a new contracting supply chain, and carbon has played a central role in the decision making there, in terms of the commitments, the ideas, the innovation, their commitment to work with us. So it is playing a part. In terms of the increased cost, I suppose we're looking at, it may not always be at increased cost, because generally if you reduce carbon, there is generally opportunities there to reduce costs. So there might be a balance to be played there. But again, I suppose that's one of the reasons for our provocation today, I suppose, is to understand better where there are costs that we cannot offset in any other way, and help our procurement teams and commercial teams with that understanding. Mark, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, it's just I think back to that the slide I showed, which is kind of the three big outcomes: net zero, great value and sustainability, and the service levels. So those are three big outcomes, and you can't kind of say I'm just going to focus on one. It has to be cost and carbon together. You know, they're not kind of, you can't disentangle them too far. This is why we need more data to understand the carbon within here, so we can actually make some better choices. But as I say, I'm kind of with Ian. I haven't yet seen huge evidence that it's going to cost us a lot more to do it. Equally, if you think about the macro economy, dare I say it, the projections are that, you know, the economy will have to decarbonise, which means the products and services in the economy will have to decarbonise. So it shouldn't just be us asking this. And I think that it's you know, the kind of the trends and what you see in your own sectors, in your own products over the next few years is you know, we're really interested to see where you think that's going.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, well, I think we've got at least another 6 questions here, so I guess if I can ask you to be fairly concise on as best you can on some of these answers. So, when do Scottish Water plan on making investment emissions a mandatory requirement for the supply chain companies to be on your framework?
So we're asking that now. However, we do realise for some companies, just like ourselves, we're on a journey. So we are saying that, you know, we are looking for those companies that can't do it now, that they, you know, they do that certainly within a 2-year period of time.
Okay, thanks, Ian. How does a contractor compete when initial install costs may be higher, but whole life costs and the whole life carbon may be less?
I think from my perspective, I think we have to see the data. You know, there haven't been too many cases where we've been able to test that principle enough for kits. So the way that kind of we're thinking in Scottish Water, the way the appraisals go in Scottish Water for what we choose to do, are driving us towards making sure we've got those data available, so we can make the informed choices. So as I say, it comes back to that, we need the information to help support those choices.
And I might also add there that the Water Industry Commissioner in Scotland did allow Scottish Water an additional sum of money, recognising the need to go on the carbon journey. So the fact that, you know, if there is an increased cost and it can be justified, then, you know, there are opportunities there that, you know, we will need to accept that increased cost.
That's great. Okay, a question here from Lewis. How does the water industry at large place a value on low carbon solutions to ensure that the right options to drive net zero carbon aren't sidelined for the cheapest alternatives?
I mean, I think from answering from a Scottish Water perspective, first off, delivering net zero emissions is one of the 3 big ambitions. Therefore, we have to look at what we're doing and the choice we make through that lens. We mentioned just then about the whole life costs and everything else. One of the things that we need to understand is how do we drive down, for example, the energy consumption and the costs of running things on site? How do you factor that into then against the whole life carbon and maintenance and everything else? So what we're trying to do is to develop a view within Scottish Water of the abatement costs of carbon for all the different technologies that we have. What are we, you know, the cost attractiveness of driving an energy efficiency scheme, pump replacements and all the other bits and pieces, you know, matching that in terms of the initial install costs against the payback periods of getting more efficient kit, and also building the embodied carbon into that view. So we're currently developing our understanding of the most attractive options for us to drive down cost and carbon at the minute. We're still relatively early in the journey on this one, populating these abatement curves to understand that position. And as I say, you know, I know it's a bit of a broken record, but you know, the good data is really key to helping us to really understand where this fits in. Because at the moment it's difficult for us to justify going for the, you know, say the higher cost option unless we have the back-end data to show what it delivers for us in carbon and various other ways.
Okay, question here from Kevin. How do you ensure that manufacturers adopt a consistent approach to the calculation of embodied carbon?
I mean, I suppose just in first instance, we're asking to provide the data, and then we, through people in my team, we've had a bit of a look at what comes through and seen whether it makes sense. But in particular, what we are asking people to do is we're giving them the embodied carbon calculator to fill in for their kit. That makes it easier for us to understand if it's apples and apples that we're looking at here. But there's an emerging kind of guidance around all of this. There's the various technical standards around accounting for it that are out there. We appreciate it's a big step to kind of get into that area. And what we're simply trying to do at this point in time is have some simple calculator sheets that allow us to get onto the same page. And we know it'll take a bit of time to mature that.
Okay. Is the focus more on reducing gross overall emissions or offsetting emissions via initiatives like renewables of tree planting, etc., or is it a blend of both approaches?
So I'll answer this one. In terms of, we do recognise that as part of the capital programme, we are going to have to continue to build things, and as part of that, we are assuming that we're going to reduce our carbon investment by 75%, and then the remaining amount to get to net zero, we're actually going to have to offset with tree planting or increasing our peatland areas. So, within the work that I'm doing, we're working towards that 75%, and Mark and his team is already working on the offsetting of the remaining 25%.
Thanks, Ian. Where do you think the Pump Centre can help to shape and drive net zero plant and equipment into designs within the wider UK water industry?
Ian, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so, well, as I say, the ask today is to provide data and information. And if you're struggling to do that, let us know and come with us on the journey, and we'll try and help you. As I say, it's an area that we're all increasing our understanding, and at the moment it's data that's kind of, particularly on the MIACA equipment, that's kind of holding us back.
And I would just add, it's been great to get the Pump Centre buy-in to doing this, to adjusting the data sheets and to include in the embodied carbon calculators within there. So ultimately, it's we are on the journey now. So we know it won't be right first time, perfect for everybody first time, but we need to start getting this in.
Excellent. Right, last two questions, quick answers, please. Do many other UK water companies have net zero targets for investment emissions, or are their targets purely for operational emissions?
The Water UK route map is operational to 2030, so it's got a tighter timeline than the Scottish Water's one, but it's focused primarily on the operational emissions, the ones that are in control of the companies. But certainly there's some great work in the likes of Anglian Water and several others that are really getting in and have been doing it for a long time and been making some great progress around all of this. Collectively, as a sector, it's going to be an issue we will increasingly grapple with, and I expect things to come out in the next couple of years around this. Okay,
last question. A very quick answer, please. Scottish Water has a great record in delivering off-site built solutions. How much does this approach help to inform supply chain embodied carbon?
So I don't have a value of how much it helps, but it is something that we're looking to do more of. So we're still looking for areas where we can do more off-site solutions. Obviously, that controlled environment does help, but again, it comes back to the MIACA data and equipment. We need the carbon data for that to help us improve our understanding and areas of focus.
Okay, that's great, guys. We've done all the questions just about in time. So thank you both, Ian and Mark, for the presentation. Thank you all for attending. I'm now going to put up a slide that shows the next two technical presentations that are coming along in the programme. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, and goodbye for now. Thank you.